Mike Andrew. I'm Secretary Treasurer of King County Pride at Work chapter. I also represent Pride at Work on the Martin Luther King County Labor Council Executive Board, and I'm a member of the National Writers Union, UAW 1981.
And in the past, what other organizations have you been a part of?
Well, I've been a part of a number of different unions. I mean, I was a meat cutter, UFCW Local 81. I can still break down a salmon in under 2 minutes. A number of other unions, depending on where I worked and when. I was involved in ACT UP somewhat, in Queer Nation somewhat. I was involved in various anti-war organizations, both the Vietnam War and all the wars that have followed.
That keeps coming up, and I'm finding that within the LGBT movement with activists, their first fray wasn't actually the LGBT part,
Right.
but was anti-war.
Right.
Almost with every single one, and that's something.
Particularly folks in my generation, yeah, because that was one of the two big issues that motivated baby boomers. That and African American rights.
So why were you anti-war?
Wow, that's a complicated question. I think, like a lot of folks in that generation, we thought that the war was morally wrong and politically wrong.
Okay, so you were a part of anti-war protests. Talk a little bit about what that looked like, because now protesting is different, as you know. So what was it then?
Well, I'll tell you a story about the closest I ever came to being shot dead. And that'll give you sort of a flavor for what the anti-war stuff was like, at least where I was going to school in Berkeley. So it was my first semester at Berkeley. This was fall 1970. It was just a few months after the invasion of Cambodia and Kent State. Right. There was combat going on in the south part of Telegraph Avenue. If you've ever been to Berkeley, Telegraph Avenue runs north from Oakland through Berkeley and then runs directly into the UC campus at Bancroft.
Okay.
So right there at Bancroft and Telegraph, there's the Student Union building. And around the second floor of the Student Union building, there's an outside balcony. So since I knew that there was combat going on further south on Telegraph, I thought, well, I'll go up on the balcony and look down the street and see what's going on. So I walked up the staircase. When I got up there were other folks there, but they were all standing against the wall of the building. I did not stop to think about why. So I walked to the balcony, leaned out over it to see what was going on down Telegraph, and down at the foot of the building there's 3 Alameda County Sheriff's deputies with shotguns on their hips. And simultaneously, as if they were doing synchronized policing or something, they chamber rounds, point their weapons at me, and say, "Step away from the railing."
Wow.
Which, of course, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized this is probably not the best place in the world for me to be. So I walked back down the stairs and started walking through Sproul Plaza and away from the Student Union building. When I'd gotten, maybe 30 feet away, I turned back and there were a whole line of cops with their guns drawn going up the stairs to clear the building.
Wow.
So that kind of gives a flavor of what the situation was
And
like.
it had shotguns.
Yeah, it had shotguns.
That's crazy.
And in those days, remember, rubber bullets were first invented by the British and first used in Northern Ireland. So it wasn't very common to use rubber bullets in those days. Generally, what cops used if they didn't want to kill you outright was birdshot.
Wow. So there were times, like you said, combat. So you mean where the protesters were clashing with the? Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I mean.
Okay.
The Alameda County Sheriff's deputies had armored cars that they would fit out with sections of chain link fence on both sides so that they could sweep up the street, and just push crowds in front of them.
Wow.